Good morning and welcome to Wednesday's English lesson for the 6th of January 2021. Now, as it's our first day back, I thought we'd start with something that would get your writing skills back on track. So we're going to do a little bit of sentence building. You will need a pen or pencil and a piece of paper. So if you need to, stop the video and go and grab yourself those things. Okay, now I have a sentence here. A unicorn disappeared. It's definitely a sentence. It has a subject and it has a verb, it has a capital letter, it has a full stop. But that sentence actually leaves me with a lot of questions because there's really not very much information in the sentence. So I want you to write that sentence at the top of your piece of paper. But before you do, let's just have a look at this word here, disappeared. It can be a little tricky to spell, but if you break it up, you will see that we have the root word appear with two P's. We've then added the prefix dis to change the meaning, and also we've added the past tense ed ending. So when you copy this sentence onto your piece of paper, make sure you spell the word disappeared correctly. Okay, a unicorn disappeared. I would like to know some more information about that unicorn. And the first thing we're going to do is add an adjective here. So we could have a magical unicorn, a three-legged unicorn, a stubborn unicorn, a friendly unicorn. I've decided I'm going to have an elderly unicorn. An elderly unicorn disappeared. Stop the video for a moment and you rewrite your first sentence adding in an adjective to describe the unicorn. Now, we know a little bit about that unicorn, but I'd really like to know a little bit more about the unicorn. So this time, I'm going to add some more information here. And I'm going to add what is called a relative clause. Now, relative clauses are very good because they let us add lots of information to a sentence and they make it much more interesting. And I'm going to begin my relative clause with the word who. An elderly unicorn who was deaf in one ear. An elderly unicorn who only had 3 legs. I think I'm going to go with this. An elderly unicorn who was known to be greedy disappeared. Because I've added that extra information as a relative clause, I need to put some punctuation around it. So I could either use 2 commas, or I could use brackets, or I could use dashes. I'm going for brackets. An elderly unicorn who was known to be greedy disappeared. Stop the video and rewrite your sentence from the second one down, adding some extra information as a relative clause beginning with the word who. So we now know that the unicorn was elderly and it was known to be greedy. But what I'm wondering now is, what had that unicorn been doing before it disappeared? An elderly unicorn who was known to be greedy disappeared after having a terrible argument with her brother. Maybe. An elderly unicorn who was known to be greedy disappeared after playing with a magic box. Let's think why that unicorn may have disappeared. Now, I'm going back in my sentence to the fact that the unicorn was greedy. So I'm going to add, an elderly unicorn who was known to be greedy disappeared after eating 122 mince pies. Stop the video, go back to this sentence, add the word after, then tell me what the unicorn was doing before it disappeared. So we've now got an elderly unicorn who was known to be greedy, disappeared after eating 122 mince pies. I'd really like to know when this all happened. Now, what I think we could do is add an adverbial of time right at the beginning of the sentence. You could use last night, you could use yesterday, you could use on Thursday. But I think you could probably stretch your imaginations and creativity to come up with something that's a little bit more descriptive. I've had a look at the fact that my unicorn is eating mince pies. So, my adverbial of time reads, as the sun was setting on Christmas Eve, because that would make sense with the mince pies. So we've now got, as the sun was setting on Christmas Eve, an elderly unicorn, who was known to be greedy, disappeared after eating 122 mince pies. Stop the video and see if you can add a time adverbial at the beginning of your sentence to tell me when this happened. But we're not finished yet. As the sun was setting on Christmas Eve, an elderly unicorn, who was known to be greedy, disappeared after eating 122 mince pies. Do you notice what I've done with the final full stop? I've changed that to a semicolon. Now, a semicolon indicates that we're going to start a new sentence here, but the sentence is related to the previous sentence. So we need to find something we can put on the end that still adds more information. So, as the sun was setting on Christmas Eve, an elderly unicorn, who was known to be greedy, disappeared after eating 122 mince pies. It is not the first time this has happened. Do you see how that sentence links to the previous sentence? My idea to finish mine off is going to be this. As the sun was setting on Christmas Eve, an elderly unicorn, who was known to be greedy, disappeared after eating 122 mince pies. Perhaps she exploded. Now note here, although this is a different sentence, it doesn't need a capital letter because it follows a semicolon. So what I want you to do is add a semicolon to the end of your previous sentence and add one more sentence to give some more information. Stop the video and see if you can complete your sentence builder activity. So let's recap on what we've done. We started with a unicorn disappeared. As we said before, that is a sentence, but one that leaves many questions unanswered. And we've worked through the sentence builder to end up with this. As the sun was setting on Christmas Eve, an elderly unicorn, who was known to be greedy, disappeared after eating 122 mince pies. Perhaps she exploded. I would love to see your sentences, so please write them on a piece of paper and send me a photograph. Okay, let's move on to what you'll be doing in English over the next 3 days. So, for Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, your main English activity will be writing poetry. And to write this poetry, you will be using the video tutorials of this brilliant poet, Simon Mull. Now, the way that Simon organises his poetry lessons is he asks you to get a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, and he talks you through collecting loads of ideas. You're just collecting them in rough to start with. Doesn't matter how you write them, you can write them in colours, you can write them anywhere. And when you've collected all those ideas, you then look at them, decide which ones you'd like to use, which ones you wouldn't like to use, and you put them together in a poem. Now, all the instructions for today's poetry activity are on Google Classroom. You'll find them in Google Slides. And there is a link to Simon Mole's website for today's poem. If you can't get on the link, don't panic, because I've put the instructions in the Google Slides presentation. And when you open your Google Slides, the best way to view them on Google Classroom is to click on the little button that says Present, and then you will get a full screen of the slides. I'd love to see your poems, so when you've finished, perhaps you could either type them or write them, send me a photograph, or put them on Seesaw, or even send me them back on Google Classroom. Good luck.